so sad. I've lost the best friend.
Nobody expected to see YUNGBLUD at Ozzy Osbourne's memorial service. Hell, nobody expected him at the exclusive after-party either. But there he was at 3 in the morning, pink hair blazing under the chandelier lights of Sharon's Beverly Hills mansion, walking straight into a room full of rock royalty who looked at him like he'd just desecrated a church. The after-party was supposed to be intimate, sacred even. Just the legends who'd actually known Ozzy, who'd shared stages and stories with the Prince of Darkness. Iron Maiden, Metallica, Alice Cooper, Judas Priest, men who'd built heavy metal with their bare hands and weren't about to let some 26-year-old pop-punk upstart crash their grief.
I remember just like seeing his like glasses in his like big mouth, and I just had someone to identify.
But YUNGBLUD didn't sneak in. He didn't apologize or explain how he got past security. He walked straight up to the bar, ordered a whiskey neat, and raised his glass to the room full of stunned silence. "To the man who taught me that being mental isn't a weakness," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "It's a superpower." That's when Rob Halford from Judas Priest lost his shit. The metal god himself stood up, pointed a finger at YUNGBLUD, and said what everyone in that room was thinking.
I was a loud, crazy, out-of-the-box kid, and he represented that idea. And I think seeing as that family have become like really close to me in the years, like Sharon has always given me advice on like, do not dilute your madness, do not dilute your light, let it just.
One in that room was thinking, what the hell gives you the right to be here? You didn't know Ozzy, you're not even metal, you're just some kid playing dress-up with our culture. The room went dead silent. This wasn't just about party crashers anymore. This was about legacy, about who gets to carry the torch when legends die. And here was this young artist from Doncaster, standing his ground against titans who could end his career with a phone call. YUNGBLUD took a sip of his whiskey and smiled that crooked grin that's made him famous. "You're right," he said. "I'm not metal, I'm not punk either, I'm not pop or rock or whatever label you want to slap on me. But neither was Ozzy when he started. He was just John from Birmingham who didn't fit anywhere else." That got their attention, because every single person in that room knew what it felt like to be the outsider, the freak, the one who didn't belong anywhere except on stage. "You think I'm here because I'm some fanboy who wants to take selfies with his heroes," YUNGBLUD continued, his voice getting stronger.
And that energy has been such a massive inspiration to me, like my whole life. Like Ozzy was my North Star in everything I would ever do, because I think I was always a little bit energetic and out of the box and a little too much for some people. But when I saw him, I remember like when you first see someone when
I'm here because Ozzy saw something in me that you can't see yet. And frankly, that's your loss, not mine.
He'd be happy that everybody remembers him and everybody loves him.
Tony Iommi, who'd been silent all night, finally spoke up. "Kid's got balls, I'll give him that, but balls don't make you the next Ozzy Osbourne." "Good," YUNGBLUD shot back. "Because the world doesn't need the next Ozzy Osbourne, it needs the first YUNGBLUD." And Ozzy knew the difference. That's when Sharon Osbourne, who'd been watching from the corner with tears still fresh on her cheeks, walked over and put her hand on YUNGBLUD's shoulder. "He's right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ozzy talked about this kid more than any of you know." The shock on those legendary faces was priceless. Sharon continued, "You want to know what Ozzy said about YUNGBLUD? He said, 'That boy's doing what I did 40 years ago, just with different tools.' He said YUNGBLUD understood something most of you have forgotten, that rock and roll was never about the music. It was about giving kids permission to be themselves when the whole world told them they were wrong." Gene Simmons from Kiss laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. "So what, he's the chosen one now? The heir to the throne? Give me a break."
United are the voices. United are the screams. United will be the colours, not just in our dreams. Because this is a moment to ourselves we must see. This is a moment to ourselves we must speak. They will not want us to be sad, because we can find comfort.
YUNGBLUD finished his whiskey and set the glass down hard on the bar. "I'm not here to inherit anything," he said. "I'm here to earn it. Every single day, with every kid who tells me my music saved their life, with every teenager who feels less alone because I exist. You built the foundation, and I respect the hell out of you for that. But foundations are meant to be built on, not worshipped. The room stayed silent for what felt like hours. These were men who'd spent 50 years being the rebels, the outsiders, the ones who shocked the world. And now they were being challenged by someone who represented everything they'd paved the way for, and everything they couldn't understand. YUNGBLUD headed for the door but stopped and turned back one last time. Ozzy didn't become the Prince of Darkness by playing it safe or asking permission from the generation before him. He became a legend by being exactly who he was, even when it terrified everyone else. That's what I'm doing. That's what he taught me to do. As the door closed behind him, the legends were left with an uncomfortable truth. Maybe this pink-haired kid from England wasn't trying to replace Ozzy Osbourne. Maybe he was trying to do something even more dangerous, evolve him. Here's what nobody knew about that confrontation at Sharon's after-party. YUNGBLUD wasn't bluffing when he said Ozzy had talked about him. In fact, their relationship went back 3 years, starting with a moment that changed both of their lives forever. It was Reading Festival 2022. YUNGBLUD had just finished his set, sweat-soaked and electric, when security approached him backstage. "Someone wants to meet you," they said. "Says it's important." YUNGBLUD figured it was another industry suit wanting to talk business, maybe a collaboration offer. He definitely didn't expect to find Ozzy Osbourne sitting alone in a golf cart, looking older and frailer than his public appearances suggested, but with those same wild eyes that had terrified parents for 5 decades. "Sit down, kid," Ozzy said, patting the seat next to him. "I've been watching you perform for the last hour, and I need to tell you something." YUNGBLUD later described that moment as surreal. Here was his hero, the man who'd basically invented everything YUNGBLUD stood for, wanting to have a private conversation. But what Ozzy said next floored him completely. "You remind me of myself when I was young," Ozzy said, his voice quieter than YUNGBLUD had ever heard it. "But you're smarter than I was. You're not just rebelling, you're rebelling with purpose. And that scares the shit out of the industry." That conversation lasted 2 hours. Ozzy told YUNGBLUD stories that had never made it into any biography, moments of doubt and fear that the Prince of Darkness had never admitted to anyone. And YUNGBLUD, for the first time in his career, found himself speechless, just listening to a legend dissect what it really meant to be different in a world that profits from conformity. "The thing about being the freak," Ozzy said, "is that you become responsible for all the other freaks. Every kid who doesn't fit, who gets bullied, who thinks there's something wrong with them, they look to you for proof that different isn't broken. That's not fame, kid, that's a calling." From that night forward, YUNGBLUD started receiving texts from an unknown number. Just random thoughts, advice, warnings about the industry. It took him weeks to realize it was Ozzy, reaching out whenever he had something important to share. Not through managers or publicists, just direct communication from one outsider to another. The texts revealed a side of Ozzy that shocked YUNGBLUD. "Don't let them clean up your image too much," one message read. "The moment you become safe, you stop being useful to the kids who need you most." Another said, "Your gender-fluid thing isn't just fashion, it's revolution. I couldn't do that in my time, but you can. Use it." But the most important conversation happened last year when YUNGBLUD was going through his darkest period. The backlash against his political activism was intense. Death threats were coming daily, and he was questioning whether the fight was worth it. His phone rang at 2 in the morning. It was Ozzy. "I heard you're thinking about backing down," Ozzy said, no pleasantries, straight to the point. "Let me tell you something, and listen carefully because this is the most important thing I'll ever tell you. The moment you stop scaring people in power, you stop mattering to the people without power." Ozzy went on to explain how he'd faced similar pressure throughout his career, how record labels and politicians and parents' groups had tried to silence him by making the personal cost too high. "But every time I wanted to quit," he said, "I'd get a letter from some kid saying my music stopped them from killing themselves, and I'd realize that my comfort didn't matter compared to their survival." That's when Ozzy revealed the strategy that had kept him relevant for 50 years. Don't just be controversial for controversy's sake. Be controversial because the truth is controversial. Be loud because the people who need to hear you can't hear whispers over the noise of their pain. The mentorship intensified over the following months. Ozzy would call before YUNGBLUD's major TV appearances, not to wish him luck, but to remind him of his responsibility. "You're not performing for the people who already get it," he'd say. "You're performing for the kid in Middle America whose parents think there's something wrong with them because they don't fit the mold. Make sure that kid knows they're not alone." YUNGBLUD started to realize that every controversial moment in his career, the dress on stage, the political rants, the unapologetic queerness, had been unconsciously guided by Ozzy's philosophy. But now it was conscious, strategic, purposeful. The last conversation they had was 3 weeks before Ozzy died. "I'm proud of you, kid," Ozzy said, his voice weaker but his conviction stronger than ever. "You're doing something I never could. You're making it okay to be different instead of just making it okay to be angry about being different. That's evolution, not just rebellion." YUNGBLUD kept those conversations secret until now, because he understood what Ozzy had taught him. The mentor's job isn't to create a copy of themselves. It's to create something better. Here's what most people don't understand about YUNGBLUD's controversial moments. They're not random acts of rebellion. They're calculated warfare using Ozzy's playbook, updated for a generation that can't be shocked by biting the head off a bat because they've seen everything on TikTok before breakfast. Take the dress incident at the Brit Awards last year. YUNGBLUD walked the red carpet in a flowing black gown with combat boots, and the internet lost its collective mind. Traditional rock fans called it attention-seeking nonsense, a betrayal of masculine rock heritage. But anyone who understood Ozzy's methods saw the genius immediately. In 1981, Ozzy showed up to a record label meeting in one of Sharon's dresses because he wanted to make executives uncomfortable enough to actually listen to his music. The shock value was just the delivery method for the art. YUNGBLUD's dress served the exact same purpose. It made people pay attention long enough to hear what he was actually saying about gender expression and identity freedom. "Ozzy taught me that controversy without message is just noise," YUNGBLUD explained in a rare, honest interview. "But controversy with purpose, that's revolution." The political activism follows the same blueprint. When Ozzy sang War Pigs in 1970, it wasn't just heavy music. It was anti-establishment rebellion wrapped in riffs that parents couldn't understand. YUNGBLUD's rants about mental health funding and LGBTQ+ rights serve the identical function for Gen Z. The medium evolved, but the mission stayed the same: comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. But here's where YUNGBLUD's rebellion gets really smart. He's weaponizing social media the way Ozzy weaponized MTV. When Ozzy appeared on television in the 80s, conservative parents lost their minds because suddenly their kids had access to something dangerous and unpredictable in their living rooms. YUNGBLUD does the same thing, but instead of waiting for MTV to play his videos, he delivers unfiltered authenticity directly to kids' phones. Every Instagram story where he talks about anxiety becomes a direct message to teenagers struggling with depression. Every TikTok where he challenges gender norms becomes permission for confused kids to explore their identity. He's turned his platform into what Ozzy's concerts were in the 70s, a safe space for misfits to feel normal. The backlash has been intense and predictable. Old-school metal fans accuse him of diluting the genre, of making rock music soft. Pop culture critics call him manufactured rebellion, corporate punk designed to sell albums. YUNGBLUD's response reveals how deeply he's internalized Ozzy's lessons. If you're not pissing someone off, you're probably not saying anything important. But the most brilliant part of YUNGBLUD's strategy is how he's bridged the gap between Ozzy's generation and his own. When he collaborates with Machine Gun Kelly or Olivia Rodrigo, he's not abandoning rock principles. He's expanding them. He's proving that rebellion doesn't have to sound the same to serve the same purpose. The fashion choices that seem random to outsiders are actually strategic cultural warfare. The pink hair isn't just aesthetic, it's a challenge to masculine stereotypes in rock music. The painted nails, the makeup, the gender-fluid presentation all serve to expand what's acceptable for young men in a genre that's historically been aggressively masculine. Ozzy shocked people by being dark and scary, YUNGBLUD said during a podcast appearance last year. "I shock people by being colorful and emotional, same rebellion, different costume." The most telling example of this evolution came during his Manchester arena show 6 months ago. In the middle of his set, YUNGBLUD stopped the music and spent 10 minutes talking directly to the audience about suicide prevention, giving out helpline numbers and making everyone promise to check on their friends. It was pure Ozzy energy, stopping a concert to deliver an important message, but updated for an audience where mental health awareness is literally a matter of life and death. Traditional rock critics called it preachy, a waste of concert time. But YUNGBLUD's fans understood. Their idol was using his platform the same way Ozzy had used his, to be more than just entertainment, to be a lifeline. The numbers don't lie about the effectiveness of this approach. YUNGBLUD's audience is overwhelmingly young people who have never owned a CD, who stream music instead of buying albums, who discover artists through algorithms instead of radio. By any traditional metric, these aren't rock fans, but they're showing up to YUNGBLUD's concerts in face paint and homemade band shirts, creating community the same way metalheads did in the 80s. He's not just carrying Ozzy's torch, he's proven the torch can burn in daylight, in colors brighter than anyone imagined possible. The rebellion didn't die with the Prince of Darkness, it just learned to use pronouns and talk about therapy. And the best part, this is only the beginning. YUNGBLUD's next album isn't just another collection of songs. It's his official bid to claim the throne Ozzy left vacant, and the pressure is absolutely crushing him. According to sources close to the project, this album will either cement his place as rock's new voice of rebellion or destroy his career trying. The working title alone reveals the stakes, The Misfit Manifesto. It's a direct challenge to everyone who's ever questioned YUNGBLUD's right to carry forward Ozzy's legacy. But here's what makes this project absolutely insane. It features collaborations with Black Sabbath members that nobody saw coming. Tony Iommi, the man who literally invented the heavy metal guitar riff, has been secretly working with YUNGBLUD for 8 months. The same Tony Iommi who questioned YUNGBLUD's credentials at Sharon's afterparty. What changed his mind? A conversation with Sharon that revealed something Ozzy had planned before his death. Ozzy told me 3 months before he died that he wanted YUNGBLUD to work with Tony, Sharon confided to Rolling Stone last week. He said, "That kid needs to understand where the power comes from, not the theatrics, not the controversy, the actual musical foundation." Tony was skeptical, but he respected Ozzy's wishes. The collaboration process has been brutal. Iommi pushed YUNGBLUD to strip away everything that made him commercially successful: the pop hooks, the accessible melodies, the TikTok-friendly song structures, and forced him to find his voice using only raw emotion and crushing guitar work. The result, according to early listeners, is unlike anything YUNGBLUD has ever recorded. It's heavier than anything he's done, but somehow more vulnerable, says one industry insider who heard Rough Demos. You can hear him fighting to prove himself on every track. It's like watching someone try to lift weights that are almost too heavy, but somehow managing it through pure determination. But the real pressure comes from an unexpected source, Sharon Osbourne herself. After initially being skeptical of YUNGBLUD's claims to Ozzy's legacy, Sharon has become his most powerful ally and his harshest critic. She's essentially appointed herself as the guardian of what Ozzy's legacy should become, and she's testing YUNGBLUD at every turn. Sharon calls me at random hours to challenge me, YUNGBLUD revealed in a recent interview. She'll be like, "Ozzy would have never done that song that way, try again." Or she'll send me old Black Sabbath demos and say, "Show me you understand what this actually means." It's terrifying and inspiring at the same time. The most controversial track on the album is reportedly titled Crown of Thorns, a 7-minute epic that directly addresses YUNGBLUD's critics within the rock community. Sources say it features samples of actual negative comments from metal legends, turned into ammunition for YUNGBLUD's counterattack. It's a risky move that could either silence his doubters or turn them into permanent enemies. Geezer Butler, Black Sabbath's bassist and the band's primary lyricist during their classic period, also contributed to the project. But his involvement came with conditions that reveal the impossible standards YUNGBLUD is being held to. Butler reportedly told YUNGBLUD, "You can use our legacy, but only if you evolve it. If this album sounds like something we could have made, then you've failed." The production timeline has been insane. YUNGBLUD has been working 18-hour days for 6 months, re-recording songs that didn't meet Sharon's approval, scrapping entire compositions that felt too safe. His team is worried about his mental health, but YUNGBLUD refuses to slow down because he knows this is his one shot to prove himself. "There's no middle ground here," he said during a rare, vulnerable moment on his podcast. "Either this album establishes me as worthy of carrying Ozzy's torch, or it proves all the critics right. There's no participation trophy for trying to be the next Prince of Darkness." The industry buzz suggests that major rock publications are already preparing career-defining reviews. Rolling Stone, Metal Hammer, Kerrang! Everyone understands that YUNGBLUD's fourth album will determine whether Rock Rebellion has a future, or if it died with Ozzy. The pressure has created an impossible situation where YUNGBLUD has to honor the past while creating something completely new. But perhaps the most telling sign of what's at stake came from an unexpected source: Paul McCartney. The Beatles legend, who rarely comments on contemporary music, was asked about YUNGBLUD during a recent interview and said, "That young man is attempting something very brave, to carry forward a type of artistry that may no longer be possible in today's world. I hope he succeeds, because if he fails, something important dies with him." The album drops in 3 months. Pre-orders have already broken streaming records, but that's not the metric that matters. What matters is whether YUNGBLUD can prove that Ozzy's brand of dangerous authenticity can survive in a world of manufactured rebellion and corporate punk. He's not trying to be the next Ozzy Osbourne. He's trying to be the first YUNGBLUD worthy of the throne. And if he fails, there may never be another chance for rock music to reclaim its role as the voice of the misfits. The crown is waiting. The question is whether YUNGBLUD is strong enough to wear it. YUNGBLUD's coronation moment approaches, and the future of rebellious music hangs in the balance. Will he prove worthy of Ozzy's legacy or crumble under impossible expectations? Subscribe now to witness whether rock's crowned prince can evolve rebellion for a new generation. This battle for music's soul is just beginning.